Welcome to Learn Commerce PU online classes. Don't forget to like our video and subscribe our YouTube channel for all the updates.
Hello students, welcome to the second PUC English online classes. In today's class, let us discuss the poem To the Foot from Its Child by Pablo Neruda. Pablo Neruda, he is a Chilean poet and he is noted as a surrealist poet. Surrealist poet in the sense who writes more like dream than reality. So he was called as a surrealist poet. And in this poem, he is trying to tell us how the child's foot, it becomes an adult foot and beyond until it dies. So the changes from childhood to its death, what are the changes are taking place, that is explained in the poem. And also here the foot is the metaphor for life and also to the child here. So the journey of foot from its childhood to the towards the adulthood and towards the death. So here in the poem, 4 stages of the life is discussed, that is the childhood, then the discovery of truth in the sense it's the growth, and the maturity, the adulthood, and death and rebirth. Okay, the 4 stages of the child is discussed in the poem. So here foot is also a metaphor to the traits and tribulations of human life, his birth, his death, his dreams and realities. So whatever the child, in the sense the foot faces the difficulties, hardships, obstacles, all these things are here beautifully explained by taking the concept of a foot. So foot is the metaphor for life, and here the poet, he is narrating the journey of an adult foot and beyond the untidiness or beyond some of the difficulties until it dies. Then also it describes the changes that the child's foot undergoes until it becomes an adult foot. So until it becomes an adult foot or matures, how this the foot, it faces the difficulties, hardships, etc. is described. Then child's foot or the foot journey is similar to the life's journey. Foot is a metaphor for the life. So what the poet, he is trying to tell us in this poem, let us see what he writes in the poem. So let me read the poem in the beginning. Listen carefully. The child's foot is not yet aware it's a foot and would like to be a butterfly or an apple. But in times, stones and bits of glass, streets and ladders, and the plants and the paths in the rough earth go on treating or go on teaching the foot that it cannot fly, cannot be a fruit bulging on the branch. Then the child's foot is defeated, falls in the battle, is a prisoner condemned to live in a shoe. Bit by bit in the dark, it grows to know the world in its own way, out of touch with its fellow enclosed, feeling out like a blind man. These soft nails of quartz bunched together grow hard and change themselves into opaque substance, hard as horn, and the tiny petaled toes of the child grow bunched and out of trim take on the form of eyeless reptiles with triangular heads like worms. Later they grow calloused and are covered with the faint volcanoes of death and coarsening hard to accept. But this blind thing walks without respite, never stopping for hour after hour, the one foot the another, now the man's, now the woman's, up above, down below, through fields, mines, markets and ministries, backwards, far afield, inward, forward. This foot toils in its shoe, scarcely taking time to bear itself in love or sleep. It walks, they walk, until the whole man chooses to stop. And then it descended underground unaware, for there everything was dark. It never knew it had ceased to be a foot, or if they were burying it so that it could fly, or so that it could become an apple. Let me explain the stanza wise. The child's foot is not yet aware it's a foot and would like to be a butterfly or an apple. The child's foot, after its birth, it thinks that it is a free and it doesn't have any difficulties, obstacles, problems on this world. It can fly like a butterfly and it can bulge like a sweet apple, and it can become a sweet. Then it shows the lack of awareness and lack of knowledge about the realities of the life. Here it describes the first stanza that describes the characteristic feature of the child's foot. It is an infant's foot. The poet is explaining that it is an infant's foot, and it does not aware that it is foot at all. The small foot, you might have seen how it is like a flower, or it's a smooth, and it's an innocent. The foot, in the sense the child, okay, the innocent or the foot here, innocent foot, in the sense it's the innocent child, and it lacks awareness and hence it dreams of unlimited possibilities. Since it is aware of all these restrictions or problems or hardships in the life, it dreams of something else or something beyond its limits, or something special. It dreams of unlimited possibilities, and it would like to be a butterfly or an apple. It likes to be a butterfly or an apple. The foot has an optimistic view of life. It is not aware of what is the reality. So, it dreams of unlimited possibilities. But as it grows, the life teaches, the society teaches, the universe that teaches the child that it cannot fly like butterfly and it cannot bulge like an apple. It shows its a real place. What are the responsibilities? What are the restrictions? How it should behave, how it should live, how it should take the responsibilities on his shoulders. That is the real reality of the life. So, here the poet uses some of the aspects of the nature which are teaching the child the reality of life. But in times, stones and bits of glass, streets, ladders and the paths in the rough earth go on teaching the foot that it cannot fly, cannot be a fruit bulging on the branch. So here it highlights on the impact of time on child. As it grows, the time that imposes some responsibility or it brings up some hardships or some of the difficulties in the life. You know how the child when the individual is a child, it does not have any responsibilities. Everything will be done by its parents. As it reaches, as it able to walk, as it able to stand, as it able to eat, as it able to do its own things by itself, the child will be left or the child will find it something difficult and something hard. And as it reaches the age 3, definitely it will find it very difficult. It has to go to the school though it does not want. It has to go to, it has to sit in the classroom if it does not want, though it does not want. And there it has to listen to the teacher, it has to obey or it has to follow the restrictions, discipline, everything. But the child does not want that. It wants to play, it wants to be happy, it wants to be free at home. But who will leave the child to be at home? The parents, definitely they will send the child to the school. So here the time that teaches or the time that brings all those hardships to the child, and it makes the child a prisoner. It won't allow the child to bulge like an apple or to fly like a butterfly. But in time, stones and bits of glasses, it is the metaphor for some of the difficulties in the life. Streets and ladders, stones and bits of glasses, walking on the stones or in the bits of glasses, is it easy? It pricks, it pains. So as the child grows, it starts to experience or it starts or begins to face the problems or difficulties or pain in the life. Streets and ladders, streets, sometimes in the streets it has to walk alone, nobody will be with him. Sometimes it has to walk with the others also. There are ladders, it has to climb. It cannot stay in a one place or sit in a one place or sleep in a one place. It has to climb, it has to walk in the streets, it has to face some of the difficulties. Walking or climbing the steps upstairs, is it not difficult? We get tired, we feel tired. And the paths in the rough earth, the child has to walk with the bare foot on the rough earth. Can we walk for a long time? We need sandals, we need chappals to walk. But here it is just the picture it is given of the foot to realize the reader that the hardships, how they come in our life and how it leads us towards the reality of life. And these are all these things that teach the child or the foot that it cannot bulge like an apple and it cannot fly like a butterfly. Then the child's foot is defeated, falls in the battle as a prisoner condemned to live in a shoe. So the child fights. Child, how it fights? The child cries. It makes a scene or it fights with the mother, it cries and all the scene it creates. Why? It does not want to go to school because there is no freedom, there is no chance of his wishes or the child's wishes or its there is no freedom for it. That is why it does not want to go to school or to sit in discipline or in a condemned or in a restricted place. So the parents, they will not leave it, the society will not leave the child to sit like that, but it forces the child to go to school. The child's foot is defeated, the child cannot win in that battle, falls in the battle, it loses its battle fighting for its freedom. and finally as a prisoner condemned to live in a shoe. So, the child is condemned, it is restricted to live in a shoe. The child here the foot is living in the shoe, in the sense the child is enveloped with some of the restrictions put up by the society. So, here this stanza which highlights the impact of time on the child, and also it shows that the child is growing, it starts growing in the outside world, and also it is experiencing the harshness and the pain of life. Then the life that is crushed through the challenges and restlessness. The life is crushed with the some of the challenges and restlessness. As the foot begins to grow, it experiences the harshness and pain of a life. Then what happens? Bit by bit in the dark, it grows to know the world in its own way. The child is trying to understand its role as a social being. It understands the world bit by bit every day in that dark. Where in that dark? In that shoe. The foot is imprisoned in the shoe. The sense the child is imprisoned in the restrictions of the society. And here in that restrictions, the child is trying to understand or trying to realize the truth of life. Out of touch with its fellow enclosed, feeling out life like a blind man. How much it becomes strange, or it is imprisoned, or it is condemned, or it is isolated, there it will not be able to know about its companion. We have two legs, right? So, when the foot is enveloped with the shoe, it will be blind towards another foot. So, here the poet is saying the same thing happens in our life also. In our busy life, in our busy schedules, in our busy routines, we forget to think about our family members, and also we won't get the time to know about our neighbors or who is along with us, about our fellow beings. The similar situation here the poet is explaining by giving this example. Then after the child is after its growth, the soft nails of quartz bunched together grow hard and change themselves. So, here this is the transition from child's foot to the adult foot, from this softness towards the transition from softness to hardness or hearts, a hard thing. These soft nails of quartz, which are like transparent, now they are bunched together, already bunched together, now they grow hard. They were bunched and now they are growing separate and change themselves into an opaque substance. It becomes a hard thing, opaque substance, which is not transparent, hard as horn. So, you might have observed the nails and the toes or fingers of the child's foot and the adult's foot. The child's foot, the fingers are bunched together. As it grows, the fingers they gets gap, and the nails they were very soft, and as it grows, it becomes hard like horn. And the tiny petal toes of the child. So, those tiny petaled toes of the child grow bunched and out of trim. There is no time to trim the petaled toes or this one the nails. Take on the form of eyeless reptiles. See how terrible comparison is given. They take a form of eyeless reptiles. Reptiles in the sense, you know, it's a snake or worm without eyes. The toes of the child becomes, when it grows old, it becomes shapeless, and it becomes, or it takes a terrible shape. with the triangular head like worms. See how the changes takes place in the physical appearance. The same way here there is emotional changes also. So people grow hard both physically and emotionally. Both physically and emotionally the human beings, the child will grow and it grow harder. Then here later it is saying, later they grow calloused and are covered with the faint volcanoes of death. As they grow old, they grow calloused in the sense those small petal toes or nails, they are getting the hard shape. They become thick, they become hard with shape, without shape, and are covered with faint volcanoes of death. So they were transformed from beautiful to ugly, beautiful to ugly. They become hard both physically and emotionally, and it is hard to accept, not volcanoes of death, a coarsening hard to accept. It makes something thick or it makes something rough to accept this truth. How the child that becomes an adult or a human being, an adult human being. So this is the transition the poet is discussing in the poem. And later in the next stanza, let us see how this foot grows and it takes the different identities. When it was small, it is called as the child's foot. As it grows, how it takes the different identities, that let us see in the next class. Hello students, welcome to 2nd PUC English online classes. In the last class, we discussed to the foot from its child. Here, the foot refers to the life of the individual. The foot of the child is the infant child that we studied in the last class. The infant foot that refers to the child, infant, okay, and as the foot grows, as the child grows, it becomes hard. Physically and emotionally it becomes hard. And then we had seen, while the child is growing, what are the difficulties it is facing and what are the problems it has to face and it has to solve. There are stones, there are bits of glass, streets, ladders, so ups and downs, there are obstacles, there are hardships in the life, and crossing all these things the child is growing. And the child, when it was an infant, when it was an innocent, at that time its dream was to become or to fly like a butterfly, and also it desired to become an apple. But as it grows, it realizes, the society makes the child to realize that it cannot bulge like an apple or it cannot fly. So here the realities of life that teaches or that realizes the child, it cannot bulge like an apple and it cannot fly like a butterfly. So here the poet Pablo Neruda, she is telling us, or telling the every reader, that how the child that grows, how the child it faces the difficulties, and how the child is burdened with the responsibilities, burdened with the duties, and burdened with the conventions of the society. So when the child is bound with all these things, it cannot complete or it cannot make its dream makes its dream a successful one. That is what Pablo Neruda tells us in the poem. And we had seen how the child's foot that becomes an adult foot, and later how the shape of the child's foot is changed when it was infant, or when the foot was the child's foot. At that time it was very smooth or petaled like a foot, and when it grows, what happens? It becomes an eyeless reptile, it becomes shapeless, it becomes hard. That we had studied in the last class. Dear students, let us see what Pablo Neruda tells us about the routine of individual's life in the next stanza. Before that, let me read the poem from the beginning. The child's foot is not yet aware it's a foot and would like to be a butterfly or an apple. But in time, stones and bits of glass, streets, ladders and the paths in the rough earth go on teaching the foot that it cannot fly, cannot be a fruit bulging on the branch. Then the child's foot is defeated, falls in the battle, is a prisoner condemned to live in a shoe. Bit by bit, in that dark, it grows to know the world in its own way. Out of touch with its fellow, enclosed, feeling out like a blind man. These soft nails of quartz bunched together grow hard and change themselves into opaque substance hard as horn, and the tiny petaled toes of the child grow bunched and out of trim, take on the form of eyeless reptiles with triangular heads like worms. Later, they grow collapsed and are covered with the faint volcanoes of death, a cursing hard to accept. But this blind thing walks without respite, never stopping for hour after hour. The one foot, the other, now the man's, now the woman's, up above, down below, through the fields, mines, markets and ministries, backwards, far afield, inward, forward. This foot toils in its shoe, scarcely taking time to bear itself in love or sleep. It walks, they walk, until the whole man chooses to stop, and then it descended underground, unaware, for there everything was dark. It never knew it had ceased to be a foot, or if they were burying it so that it could fly, or so that it could become an apple. Dear students, so in this second part, what Pablo Neruda she tells about the child's foot, the child foot that becomes an adult foot. It grows physically and emotionally, the child foot that grows and it becomes an adult foot, a responsible foot, and there it has to perform the duties, it has to bound to some of the responsibilities, and also it has to bear the responsibilities of the society. It has to adjust according to the society, according to the convention it has to live. So here the adult foot is trapped in everyday routine activities. As it grows, you know how the child is completely dependent on its parents. As it grows, it becomes an independent. Then as it becomes an adult, it has to perform some duties, responsibilities, etc. So here Pablo Neruda she tells us that without any chance of escaping from these responsibilities or from this routine, the child it grows, and how the child's identity is changed in its life. See, but this blind thing walks without respite, never stopping, without stop or without escaping from any duties or responsibilities. The child grows, and as it grows, it takes the different identities, the one foot, the other, now the man's, now the woman's. It takes the identity, different identities, and up above, down below, through fields, mines, markets and ministries. It walks in a different fields, it performs its duties, or it performs its work or job in different fields. So here the child walks, or when it grows, when it becomes an adult, it performs its performances in a different fields such as fields, mines, markets, ministries, everywhere. And being in the shoe or being blind. Why it is referred as being blind? Because the society made with its conventions, with its rules and regulations, made the child blind, and the society, it doesn't allow the child to grow like a apple or to fly like a butterfly. And then here, far afield, inward, forward, this foot toils in its shoe, scarcely taking time to bear itself in love or sleep. Having performing all these duties, having busy in all the 24 hours of the day, the child is or the foot, here not the child's foot but the adult's foot, it is not getting the time to spend in its life, which gives a little pleasure. For example, it cannot get the time to spend in its love or in sleep. It cannot get the time to spend with its family or to enjoy or to take rest or to take the leisure. So here the poet, she is saying that the child is lost in all its busy schedule. In that busy schedule, the foot that had forgotten to enjoy the life or to experience the pleasures in the life. So the child did not get to experience those silly little pleasures that make people alive, that are essential to the human soul. So all these pleasures, always work, always duties, always earning, these are all the things, they cannot give a pleasure or a satisfaction to the soul. When you spend your time with your family, with some of the works which give an entertainment, or some of the activities that give you a kind of little pleasure, if you are not indulged in that, your life becomes a waste or useless thing. Because when you don't enjoy all these things, when will you get the time? When you don't enjoy your youth, when you don't enjoy the love, when you don't enjoy the sleep, what's the meaning what's the meaning or what is the use of the life? That's what the poet is saying. And then, until the whole man chooses to stop, and then it descended underground unaware. Being busy in all these, all its works or schedule, finally the foot reaches to the death or to the stage of death. It dies. Until there, the foot that had forgotten its dream. What's the dream of the child? What's the dream of the child's foot? To become or to bulge like an apple or to fly like a butterfly. So in all these busy schedule, the foot had forgotten that dream, and finally the foot died. And when it is dying, it is also unaware about its death, and it is unaware that it cannot complete its dream. Still the foot is dreaming. The foot is dreaming. After the death, there is a hope of rebirth in the foot, and the foot, it dreams that after the rebirth, again it can bulge like an apple or fly like a butterfly. And then it descended underground unaware, for there everything was dark. How? When the child, when it was alive, it was imprisoned, it was blindfolded in the shoe. Here shoe in the sense, it's a metaphor for the society. So with the rules and regulation, with the convention of the society, the foot was blindfolded. It was bound with all those responsibilities. So it was blind. And after the death, again it was sent to the darkness in the burial. So it never knew it has ceased to be a foot, or if they were burying it so that it could fly, or so that it could become an apple. Again it had the foot that had a belief that in the next life or in the next birth, in its after the rebirth of the fruit, again it can bulge like an apple, or again it can fly like a butterfly. Still the dream did not die, only the fruit that was died, and the dream was still alive. In the sense, there is a hope of a rebirth. So here, dear students, Pablo Neruda, she is explaining the growth of the child from childhood to adulthood, adulthood to old age, and next to death. So the child, it is an innocent, the child's foot is an innocent foot. So the foot is a metaphor for the life. So how the foot becomes hard, and it becomes shapeless, and finally it dies. The same way here the life, when the life of the individual, when it was an infant or the child, it was innocent, and as it grows it learns everything, good and bad, both emotionally and physically it grows. So this is what Pablo Neruda, she is beautifully explaining the journey of life from childhood to its death. Thank you.
Don't forget to like our video and subscribe our YouTube channel for all the updates.